Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I am a psychiatrist in private practice and a faculty member at the University of Virginia. Each week, my guests and I talk about meaningful coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. We discuss synchronicity from its many perspectives, spiritually, practically, and statistically. Why? To increase your connection to coincidences so that you can benefit from coincidence awareness in your life. I've written a book also called Connecting with Coincidence. Put that phrase, Connecting with Coincidence, in your browser to find my book, Psychology Today blog, website, and social media sites. If you want to know how sensitive you are to coincidences, go to my website to take the Weird Coincidence Survey, Connecting with Coincidence. Richard Tarnas, our guest today, is the founding director of the graduate program in philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. He teaches courses in the history of ideas, archetypal studies, depth psychology, and religious evolution. He was formerly the Director of Programs and Education at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur. His second book, Cosmos and Psyche, Intimations of a New Worldview, received the Book of the Year prize from the Scientific and Medical Network and is the basis for the upcoming documentary film Changing of the Gods. And his chapter on synchronicity in that book is a gem. He has served on the board of governors for the C.G. Jung Institute of San Francisco. Rick, such a pleasure to have you on the program and to be talking with you again.
Thank you, Bernie. It's good to be with you.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Let's just jump right into your personal coincidences because we can branch out from there to so much. Tell us about that one at the Presidio in San Francisco.
Sure. Just in general, I'm alert to synchronicities happening of a wide range, but every once in a while you get a coincidence that is so remarkable and has a kind of aura of the uncanny or of the numinous.
The numinous, yeah.
Yeah, that something sacred about it, or just unusually powerful. That even if one's accustomed to perceiving the remarkable number of synchronicities that take place in human life, nevertheless, this every once in a while you get one that is quite overwhelming. And in this case, this happened in relationship to the death of one of my closest friends, and I might point out that the more powerful kinds of synchronicities often seem to occur around deaths and births and major threshold experiences in life. That's something that's been observed by many students of coincidences and synchronicities.
I add to that just the general term transitions, which gets you more general, but what you're talking about is more major and high emotion, as well as often need. Those three those contribute, but threshold is a nice way of talking about these more these larger ones, these more impressive ones.
Yeah, with threshold, you bring in that kind of, well, of course, it's a kind of Jungian term, but you're bringing in that idea of really crossing a significant boundary that may open up another dimension, or in this case, it's just we're talking about births and deaths of all kinds, symbolic as well as literal. So in this case, my friend was his name was Charles Harvey, and he was from England. He lived in England, and when he came, but we often visited each other when we were in each other's countries. But he suddenly died. Interestingly, he died right on my 50th birthday. And when I heard about the news from his wife, who wrote to me, in England. And but because members of the family also lived here in the San Francisco Bay Area, a couple months after the death, we the family, that part of the family that lived here, wanted to celebrate the, honor and have a kind of memorial for Charles here in the Bay Area. And we set up a place that we would meet in the Presidio, near the Officers Club there, that someone in the family thought was an appropriate place for getting together and just having an informal little memorial where a group of about 8 of us would just recall his life and honor him. So we came to meet at this place in the Presidio, and it was very clear at once that it wasn't an appropriate place. It was really, it had a lot of people there in a kind of restaurant kind of atmosphere, and so we regrouped out in the parking lot and thought, where should we go? And I remembered that there was a chapel in the Presidio that was right next to a very, to an old cemetery where members of the military, going back to the through the 19th century, were buried. And so it was a Sunday early afternoon, and we drove about a mile through the Presidio to where the chapel was. It overlooks the bay and the Golden Gate Bridge. And we came in, and I saw the chaplain, or the minister whose chapel it was. I found him in the near the sanctuary, and asked him if there's any way we could just have this quiet little gathering in the chapel for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and he said sure. So we gathered over in one corner of the chapel, and one after another of us were going to give a little talk in memory of Charles. And as the one of the people was speaking, she was looking at the rest of us as she was standing up in front of us in the pews, and she suddenly looked like she had seen a ghost. She seemed to be looking just over our shoulders, and we were trying to figure out what had happened. And then we turned our heads to see what she was looking at, and there, right on the wall, was this bronze plaque that said, "In memory of Charles Harvey, 1850 to 1912." I don't remember the exact years, but it was from going back to the 19th century, and it was a major a member of the military with the exact same name, who just happened to have this plaque right next to the place that we had completely accidentally, or more or less randomly, ended up at the last minute to hold this memorial for him with that exact same name. And there was, we all had a sense of, two things. Physically, you kind of get that hair going up on the back of your head feeling.
Yeah.
But in addition, there was a distinct sense of presence of the person who we had lost, that in some sense he was there, that he, or at least the universe was honoring him in this way, by kind of configuring circumstances that allowed us to feel that more was going on than meets the eye in a kind of disenchanted way. So that was one of many, but it was the first thing that came to mind when you asked for whether there would be a particular synchronicity that stood out.
Yes. We have 2 minutes left in this segment, and I want to begin the question about how you think that coincidence, that meaningful coincidence, that synchronicity happened with your group in that chapel at that time.
Well, from many years of both thinking about it and observing synchronicities and reading others' descriptions of it, I'm persuaded that the cosmos is not a completely random, unintelligent, blind process, but is saturated with intelligence through and through, and even a kind of artistry. That in some sense, life is a great artist, and partly I think it delights in patterning, with even a sense of aesthetics about it, but also that it has that there's a kind of moral intelligence, or something that it has emotional meaning for human beings. That there is a kind of I-thou relationship between every individual human being and the larger universe. And the universe just overflows with its intelligent patterning, and if we are alert to it. As I might mention, most societies and cultures in history were, and it's really only the modern civilization that convinced itself that we live in a blind and unintelligent universe in which human beings are the only intelligent.
We are at the end of this segment, Rick, and we'll come back. You are listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest, Rick Tarnas.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Gwilda Wiyaka's latest book, The Science of Magic, Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest, and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1 is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I'm your host, and our guest is Rick Tarnas, who's just beautifully described a contraposition of people who see the universe as having some intelligence and feel in it, compared to statistician David Hand, who sees everything as the result, all coincidences as the result of the law of truly large numbers. I mentioned David Hand right now to you, Rick, and to our audience because he will be on our radio show in a couple of weeks. And the difference is so vast, so amazing between random and how you just described it, Rick, that it continues to astound me. And it becomes almost a choice our listeners have to look at it in either directions, as they will see from that interview with David Hand. Rick, that was beautifully said. And I'd like to know, tell our listeners just how you got tuned in to coincidences, because one of your contributions in Cosmos and Psyche is a very simple, elegant description of how many people become tuned into coincidences. Some get hit in the face with a big one. Some of them just gradually come through through their lives. I think some people are even born, as I think I was, to just see them. Just something in our makeup that makes us see them. So how did you come to your coincidence, your synchronicity awareness?
I think it much like you, I seem to be alert to them from pretty early on. Of course, I studied depth psychology at university, which Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, one of the major founders of depth psychology, along with Freud and, well, William James in a sense, but many others. But Jung in particular is, of course, the person who came up with the whole concept of synchronicity, or he named the phenomenon that we've just been talking about of meaningful coincidences in which the patterning of events seems to be is so striking and so meaningful that it gives the impression of having been purposefully orchestrated by some larger intentionality. And so I was studying Jung at Harvard, which was probably one of the few places where Jung was taught in psychology, in a psychology department. And so I was alerted to a whole theoretical understanding of it from that point. And then, as you mentioned, I think I've observed with many people a certain series of stages where first there'll be little patternings, coincidences that can be brushed off as being either so trivial or not sufficiently potent that it makes one think anything really deep's going on. But at some point, something can happen that has real, almost like metaphysical implications, and it knocks one back. It shakes your skepticism, and opens up another way of experiencing life. And then there's a third stage that I think many people enter into, which it sounds like you are like this, and that is people who are basically alert to a continuing presence of synchronicities, which it's as if life wants to. I mean, synchronicities, and we can pursue this in a few minutes if you'd like, but synchronicities seem to serve different purposes. They're not one cookie cutter meaning. They have all sorts of possible kinds of meanings, and one of them is, I think, almost purely aesthetic, a kind of delight that we can take in the patterning that seems to be way beyond what could just randomly happen. But there's other times that coincidences happen that seem to bring a powerful meaning, such as the one I mentioned, where there's a sense of the presence of a beloved who is deceased. But then there's other synchronicities, for example, that Jung used in his life all the time, that he used to kind of correct the one-sidedness of his conscious attitude, that the synchronicity would awaken him to something else is going on here that he needs to be alert to, and then he'd change his behavior.
That is less clear to me now. I understand the idea that Jung wanted to introduce into the Western mind a more Eastern way of looking at things, as one way of saying it, more an intuitive way of looking at things. But the kinds of corrections you're talking about can be just in regular life, just looking one way but having to do some other way. I like that Fears story of that report about Jung, and the watch that stopped, and the decision about whether or not Jung would say whether the manuscript should be published or not. Does that fit with your kind of your rebalancing of things, as you just mentioned it?
Yes, I mean, does your do your
no, they don't. The audience doesn't know that story.
Well, so very briefly, a man named Henry Fierz in Zurich, Switzerland, was asked by a publisher to come to Jung, who was at that point in his later 70s or early 80s. It was in the 1950s. He was asked to come to Jung and ask him about whether he thought a particular manuscript that had been left behind by a scientist should be published or not. And they set up the meeting at Jung's house at 5 o'clock on a particular day, and he came at 5 o'clock. Jung let him in the house, and they began their conversation. After a few minutes, Jung seemingly had a generally negative attitude about the manuscript being published. He felt it shouldn't be, but the conversation continued until at a certain point, Jung was getting a little sharp in his responses, and then he looked at his watch, at which point Henry Fierz said to himself, I imagine this is the end of the meeting. Jung's had enough. But instead, a puzzled look came over Jung's face, and he said, "What time do you have?" And he said, 5:35, and he said, "And what time did we start our meeting?" And Henry said, 5 o'clock, as we had decided. He said, "Well, my clock says 5 after 5. Yours is correct, and my watch is wrong. Let's start this meeting over." He said, "My watch has actually just been thoroughly gone over by a Swiss repairman who really knows what he's doing,
sure.
And should be working perfectly. My watch is wrong. Yours is correct. Let's start this discussion over again." And they then started over, and Jung saw the whole issue from a different perspective and decided indeed that the book should be published. Now, what Jung was basically doing there is he saw immediately that there was a parallel between the stoppage of his watch and a kind of malfunction of his timepiece, and a stoppage and a malfunction in his thinking, that both of those coincided just a few minutes after the beginning of the meeting. And he took that as an indication that he needed to kind of wake up to this flaw in his thinking, or this, he used the external coincidence, which is not an overwhelming coincidence by any means, but apparently people who knew him said he was constantly alert, much in the way a shaman is in a tribal society, or Chinese sages who paid attention to the I Ching were just very attentive to such patternings as a way of getting a message from the whole to the part, and the part being Jung's narrow consciousness, and for him to wake up to the fact that something bigger is going on here. So he saw the patterning. He could read symbolic parallels like that, the way other people read a newspaper, but he did more than that. He used the coincidence as a wake-up call to realizing a certain limitation in how he was thinking about things at that moment.
That message of the whole to the part, it's a great line. It's a great way of thinking about it. And coincidences are a way of describing, or synchronicity was another definition he had, was things falling together in time, events falling together in time. That what he described as the Chinese way of looking at things, things are all of a whole at any one moment.
That's right. He very much was influenced by the Chinese science and Chinese philosophical religious traditions, such as we see in the I Ching.
But your line I hadn't heard of, the whole communicating to the part. That's a beautiful image, and that's the way he saw it. In your book, you describe how he's tuned in to sitting in the lapping of the waves at the lake and the wind making sounds on his window and birds making sounds around him, that he was tuned in to what was going on around him on a regular basis. And it's a very wonderful way of living and tuning into things. We're coming to the end of this segment, and you are listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network, and our guest is Rick Tarnas. We'll be back after a short break.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Den.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence. Our guest today is Rick Tarnas, and we are talking coincidence, synchronicity ideas. And Rick, when I listen to you describe the events, the coincidences you just described, there is a kind of mystical feel I have from your mind of that patterned intelligence universe that is trying to communicate to us in the I-thou way, as you described it earlier. There's the feeling I get from you of being that you feel part of this larger cosmos, and that you in some ways are like Jung in the sense of feeling what's going on in the moment and being open to how influences that are hard to describe affect you and affect your life.
I do experience them, I think, in a way that is perhaps similar, and do have both an emotional but also, I think, philosophical response to their existence that, yeah, I think you could describe in that way. I think it's an important part of life that if we're impoverished if we don't I think attend to them. If you think about many of the great writers, like Shakespeare's plays are just full of synchronicities and mysterious coincidences and astrological predictions and omens and so forth that usually play a quite a meaningful role. I remember the novelist Milan Kundera once wrote that it's wrong to chide the novel for being fascinated by mysterious coincidences, but it is right to chide man for being blind to such coincidences in his daily life, for he thereby deprives his life of a dimension of beauty. And I think he's particularly coming at it from the aesthetic point of view as a novelist, Kundera. And I think that is a big part of life, that the humanistic side of our culture, the literary, the films and books and so forth, are attend to, but the disenchanted scientific part of our modern mind is kind of generally tries to be is quite resistant to them.
Yes, and I am thinking of your mind in particular, and that's a beautiful quote from Kundera. I'd heard it, and glad to hear it again. But your book, Cosmos and Psyche, is a play, if you will, on synchronicity, because you're talking about the mind and you're talking about the environment when you talk about cosmos and psyche. Cosmos, in this case, being the entire universe, or at least the solar system in which you were writing the book, and our minds, and that most synchronicities involve mental events correlated in some way with environmental events. So that when you were writing this book, and now as that I'm listening to you, I can just see your mind in the solar system and beyond as you think about how coincidences happen right here on this planet.
It sounds like you have a bit of a mystical vision capacity yourself. We were talking about Jung and in relationship to this whole phenomenon, which is a natural thing to do because he played such a big role in the mid 20th century in kind of bringing this whole area of study and the phenomenon and naming it into the intellectual discourse of the 20th century.
Yes. One
coincidence that just was quite personally meaningful to me was that one day I was reading through Jung's letters, And there, I happened to be born in Switzerland myself on February 21st, 1950, in Geneva, Switzerland. And this letter, I happened to be looking at this letter, and in the letter, Jung was describing, he had written to a scientist about, in which he said, I'm sorry for being late in my response, but I've been so overwhelmingly focused in recent weeks on the study of synchronicities, and I'd like to ask your help in getting some statistical counsel on how to assess some of these. And I then look at the date that he was writing this, and it was February 21st, 1950, the day I was born. And of course, he's writing it in Switzerland too. He's a Swiss. He's there in Zurich. So
that's good. That's
yeah.
good. That's good. What did that do to you?
Oh, it just was this, again, that same feeling of we live in a universe in which, as Shakespeare said, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. It's a universe of that's just very deep. Nietzsche said, "The world is deep, deeper than day can comprehend." By which I think he meant that the usual day consciousness of the skeptical reason, skeptical rationality, only gets half the world, but the other half is night. There's day and night, the solar and the lunar, and we need both halves. We need to take in the fact that there's we are embedded in an unfolding mystery.
I'm going to tell you a coincidence because you brought up night and day this way, and I want to play with it. One that happened to me.
Right.
I met a young woman at dance. I go to dance, a kind of a spontaneous, do what you want kind of dance, 2 or 3 times a week. And she said that she came up to me after we had danced for a while and said, I liked your energy. And she gave me her card because she wanted me to tell her when the other dance events were going to take place. She didn't know about the other ones. And I told her, and then she communicated back and invited me to something, but I didn't go to that. I just didn't want to continue that relationship particularly. But while we were talking when we first met, I was describing the dance that she didn't go to, which took place on Friday night and Sunday morning. And I was trying to describe the difference between Friday night and Sunday morning. And she said, "Oh yeah, it's the difference between night and day." And because the Friday night is at night and the Sunday one is in the morning. So and light streams in on Sunday morning, and Friday night it's all internal lit and it's kind of dark. And it's a very different atmosphere. And the reason I partly bring this up is because I was referred to a Chinese medicine person, and because I wanted a little help from a Chinese person, and turned out that was her father. And it was that coincidence just stuck in my mind as something that I didn't understand. But how do you then unravel a coincidence when it happens, but you can't figure out what that means? That I met the daughter, and then a father is treating me, and it's one that's continued to unravel, to try to see what it means, because there comes some times where you can make the meaning yourself, where you have to look at the somewhat ambiguity of the circumstance and decide what to do with it.
Yes, I think in a way you're bringing up something that's important, which is that synchronicities are not. They don't just come with a directive that says this is what it means, and this is how you should act as a result of having experienced it.
Yes.
They're more of an invitation to engage in a larger field of potential meanings. It's a kind of invitation to a mystery rather than a in a telegram to that it means this or that in a straightforward way.
When you say invitation to a mystery, can you apply that to the one I've just described?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jung interpreted synchronicities the way he interpreted dreams, which again, just as I was mentioning before, he saw them as kind of expressions of. I put it in that they're expressions of meaning from the whole to the part,
Yes.
that is to our consciousness. But one could also, the way he would have put it is from the unconscious to the conscious. But the unconscious for him didn't stop just inside the skull of each individual. For him, and this was really the great breakthrough, is that he saw meaning as informing both the outer world and the inner world, that it wasn't just a human construct or a human phenomenon, that rather we live in a meaningful universe, and that in a sense what we are personally unconscious of can be carried by the outside event that takes place, the watch that stops, the golden scarab that flies in the window, the insect right at the moment that the woman's having the famous dream about the golden scarab, that this insect comes in the window right at that moment.
And we're coming to the end of this segment too, and that connection between inner and outer and what Jung did for the world, I think we can get to next time. You are listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host Bernie Beitman on the X Zone Broadcast Network with our great guest Rick Tarnas.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and our guest today is Rick Tarnas, and we're going cosmos on this. Cosmos and Psyche, we're getting out into the broad universe and putting our minds out there with Rick, who's there and helping me get there again, and it's a pleasure being out there with you, Rick. So, but what let's talk about Jung some more and his effect on Western consciousness, as you have described and written about. How did he bring discourse of synchronicity into the general public, and what's your understanding of his concept of psychological transformation and the psychology of religious experience, particularly with your understanding of the evolution of religion?
Well, I think in general, we could say about Jung's attitude towards synchronicities is that he started observing these pretty early in his adult life as actually, as he said, he grew up in a culture in a part of Switzerland that was more rural and was already open to a kind of enchanted view of nature, clocks stopping at the time of a person's death, or many birds landing on that person's home, that kind of thing. That was just part of the folk culture that he grew up with. But,
and Freud too, now that you mention it, was
true.
born in rural areas outside of Vienna, and was also more open to Hasidic kinds of thinking, which were more of a mystical bent than what happened in the big city. And there's some ideas that Freud was indebted to the Jewish mystical tradition in writing about some of the things that became psychoanalysis.
Yes, I think that's the case, and I think Freud had a kind of internal battle between this more let's call it enchanted or spiritual, mystical side of him that took dreams seriously, for example. That was not something that most scientists were doing, psychiatrists at the turn of the 20th century. And that side of him versus this more kind of neutral rationality that was part of the mainstream scientific tradition. And I think he kept having to take his this kind of wider sensibility and then narrow it into the more neutral language and conceptual framework of what became psychoanalysis, in order to bring psychoanalysis into the mainstream culture. Jung was a little more, for many reasons, was more willing to push the paradigm boundary line further.
Yes. And so Jung came from a subculture. Go ahead.
Yes,
with that.
yeah. To keep going with that, he went to university and medical school, etc. But he for over 20 years he was observing significant coincidences happening with his patients, especially happening at meaningful times in their like threshold periods of transformation. And then he also noticed them in terms of astrological synchronicities, and then his studies of the I Ching. But he didn't bring it into any kind of public discussion until over 20 years later, in 1951, he gave his final lecture at Arnos in Switzerland, and he formulated the idea of synchronicity. And I think one of the reasons he was willing to do it by that point is that he had been doing a lot of collaboration with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli, the quantum physicist, who was very interested in similar things, and they were seeing parallels between the quantum physics research and the psychological research. And so that was kind of he found a way of formulating the idea of synchronicity in a way that would be both kind of scientifically intelligible, but also attentive to the wide range of categories in which meaningful coincidences manifest themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that he became more confident. I think also, of course, he realized he didn't have too much to lose anymore by being potentially ridiculed by what was around him.
Yes.
And psychological transformation and the psychology of religious experience. Would you talk about Jung and you in those contexts?
Yes, I think in the first half of Jung's career, his focus was in many ways on bringing the relevance of the spiritual dimension of the human being into psychology.
Yes.
And that was an enormous contribution, and he opened that up, reopened that up, and he, in doing that, his basic point was that all religions have a basis in direct religious experience that takes place inside the human psyche, in which there is an encounter with the sacred, with the numinous, and that in order to have an authentic religious life, one has to attend to that the interior, this interior encounter with the sacred, with the archetypal dimension of the deep psyche, and for him, dreams, art, myth, etc., were all, as well as religious ritual, could all play a role. But then, as he integrated the phenomenon of synchronicities into his understanding, he really brought about a kind of radical transformation in what he saw as the psychology of religion, namely that it wasn't just the inner psyche that was supporting, that was the container for religious experience, but the whole world, all of nature, was now seen as saturated with meaning, and that was and supporting the process of religious transformation within the individual. That we don't live inside like skin encapsulated egos, as Alan Watts put it, but rather we are embedded in larger fields of meaning that pervade the natural world around us and the cosmos itself. And so at that point, in a sense, he's opening up spirituality to a kind of ecological, cosmological whole, rather than have it be limited to just its man and God, as it used to be said in that kind of masculine patriarchal way, that it's all about just those two beings, instead of this much more global and I think generous spiritual vision.
We only have about 3 minutes left, and I've come to believe that synchronicity awareness can be a spiritual path. And by that I mean is seeing what you just described, that the world is filled with meaning, that when we're walking around, there are what we might call symbols all around us, and that have meaning, that often have meaning for us. You can overdo that to self-aggrandizement or paranoia, if you will. But if you can find a neutral median where you can see that things around us are in a way talking with us, involved with us, trying to maybe have something to do with us, to please us aesthetically, as you described. It's so much fun. There's so much playfulness in coincidences sometimes. Sometimes I have to say, what are you guys doing? Well, how come this is well, what you doing with this? And another person on the show says, yeah, they're very funny, these guys out there, however you animate it. It's all all like play and to potential enjoyment, and being able to tune into that. You can't do that all the time. Sometimes you have to drive your car. Sometimes you have to eat what you're eating. Sometimes you have to take care of your children or relate to somebody directly. But how does one, in this last couple of minutes we have, go back and forth to being able to be tuned in and then also do regular five sensory reality?
Well, I think it's a matter of being able to hold the multiplicity of our human faculties in play all the time, and be able to kind of skillfully move between these different modes. It's a balancing act. It's a capacity to hold the tension of opposites, as Jung would say. I think to not be open to them is a kind of intellectual blindness and an impoverishment of life. You were bringing up the evolution of religion, and I think you can see that if we go way back, that all societies, all cultures that we know of, were essentially synchronistic cultures. They lived in a world in which this kind of patterning was pervaded all of nature. It's called participation mystique. It was a mystical participation in life. And then that got concentrated with the great axial religions, say, like Judaism and
we only have about 20 seconds left.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, okay. Oh my goodness, is right.
Well, today, just to finish off, today I think we're coming back to a recognition that we live in a much more mysterious universe than the mainstream modern mind accounted for, and we can be grateful for that opening.
Yes, and you're very much helping with that. Thank you very much, Rick. It's been a great pleasure having you and listening to you. You've been listening to Connecting with Coincidence on the X Zone Broadcast Network.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.